Isaac Reichman. Welcome to today's webinar, providing an overview of the new regulations for Chicago's restaurants and bars. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. We will have opportunity for questions both throughout this webinar and especially at the end. However, I may not get to every question, or I may be unable to answer every question that comes in on this webinar immediately due to the need to consult with other departments here at the city. Therefore, you'll see at the bottom of every page the BACP outreach at cityofchicago.org email address. Please email that email if you have any questions that either are answered or you would like additional clarification or something that you did not ask as a part of the webinar and would like to ask. You can please send that email to bacpoutreach@cityofchicago.org. Additionally, if you have any questions over the course of the webinar, please use the chat function in order to submit those questions. I'm typing into the chat right now, and I'm going to send you the email address that you can use for follow-up questions. Please use that chat function if you have any questions over the course of the webinar. Additionally, this webinar will be recorded. So if you have any, want to follow up, or if one of your colleagues was unable to attend today's webinar, you can, it will be recorded and we will be posting it to our website, the same website that you used in order to join this webinar, chicago.gov/business-workshops. It will be posted there within the next couple days. Really quickly, before I get started, again, please submit questions via the chat. A little bit of an agenda for today's discussion. I'm going to start out providing an update on the data and why we had to make the change that I will be talking about today. I'm going to go into detail on the new restrictions for food services and bars. Then we're going to provide a detailed overview of the Phase 4 guidelines as a whole for restaurants and bars. Finally, I'm going to talk a little bit about enforcement and operational requirements. Before I get started talking a little bit about the data, we are joined today by Samir Mayakar, the Deputy Mayor for Economic Development here at the City of Chicago. And he wanted to provide a quick opening and welcome to this webinar. Samir, are you on?
Yeah, I'm on there. And can you hear me, Isaac?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Great. Good afternoon, everybody. And the first thing I wanted to say is just thank you for your partnership. And not only for your engagement in these webinars, but for being tremendous partners and in adherence to the many changing waves of rules and regulations as we tackle this COVID crisis together. As you're going to see today with some of the health data, we've seen a steady increase in COVID cases since we more fully reopened in Phase 4. And despite the changes coming on Friday, we will remain the largest open city in America. And that is, due to the hard work of our residents and our business community and all of you. And I can't, as a fellow small business owner myself, I just can't imagine how incredibly difficult these times are for you. And we are committed to providing as much relief as possible, from loan funds to additional grant support to licensing support, expanded outdoor dining. The list will go on, and I know it's not going to be enough. I know it's never going to be enough, and we're going to push the federal government to provide more support in this upcoming wave of them trying to do a third wave of COVID relief. But I also want, especially the bar owners on the webinar, to know, for those of you who have to close your indoor capacity this Friday, we are doing this so that we can have hopefully a plateauing of cases, so we can get the cases down again, and so that we can have a very successful third, fourth quarter, and first quarter of next year. And I know it's incredibly difficult. Our commitment, the mayor's commitment, the commissioner's commitment, my commitment to all of you, is that we are going to provide more relief. We are going to get very creative and work with our partners in City Council to making sure we can provide as much outdoor space as soon as possible, because we know that we and our regulations are preventing you from doing business, and that's posing just an unbelievable amount of challenges to you. So we know we need to do more, and we will, especially with this additional wave of capacity restrictions in terms of not having any more indoor capacity for alcohol-only establishments. Additionally, as we look to the fall and the winter, given that we have a lack of federal leadership, and you're seeing COVID growing so much in surrounding states and in the South, we're going to be fighting this for a while together. And our hope is that there's a treatment or a vaccine soon. But until then, we need to start thinking about how we are going to manage this in the fall and winter, especially when the weather starts to change. So just know I'm in touch with your associations and many of you and some of your leaders as to how we can pursue ideas there together. And so if you have ideas there, please share them with us. Additionally, if you have feedback on how we can help your business, please let us know. But I just want you to know that we take no pleasure in these restrictions. We've done a good job fighting this to date, and it's because we've taken swift, aggressive action. That's why the curve you see in front of you looks the way it does. That's why we're the largest open big city in America. And that's why we had to do what we have to do coming this Friday. But just know that we are committed to you being successful, to your businesses growing again, and we're going to make sure that we provide that relief. And so just know that you have that commitment from us. And I'll hand things back over to Isaac now.
Thank you, Samir. Thank you for those words, and thank you for your leadership on everything related to this. I want to reiterate and talk a little bit about the data that you see in front of you. Again, I just want to reiterate that everything we're doing, everything that we announced yesterday and that we'll be doing Friday, everything that we've been doing dating back to March is based on what the data says and is based on ensuring the health of our community. So as you can see in this first graph, we have seen a bit of a rise in case rate in the city of Chicago, particularly when we moved into phase 4 back at June. And we've seen this rise in cases. The data shows that a lot of that rise in cases is from young people. We see a lot of people, gathering at bars. And this data is the reason why we are making the decisions that we are making. As you can see also on the section below, we are at over 200 confirmed cases of COVID-19, new cases of COVID-19 each day. And that number is important because that's the number that we kind of used as the reason why we were ready to go to phase 4, was because we had gone under 200. But now we've seen that number has risen back above 200, and it's been consistently above 200 over a 7-day rolling average, which is why, as Samir mentioned, we don't take pleasure at all, obviously, in making these sort of decisions, but the data insists that we make decisions that are necessary to protect the health and safety of our community. I encourage all of you, if you have not done so already, to visit chi.gov/COVID-. You'll see it on your screen there. I'll also type it into the chat. Again, chi.gov/COVID-. And as a reminder, I'm just typed into the chat and sent it off to you. Please use that chat function to send questions. You send them via the Q&A, I will not see them. Please visit this website, bookmark this website. I visit it every day for the latest updates on COVID-19. It's important here in the city of Chicago to be transparent and to show you, the business owner, the public, the exact data that we are using in order to make those decisions. So again, strongly recommend that you visit chi.gov/COVID-. So I wanted to very quickly, before I get into all of the new regulations, talk a little bit about phase 4, because while we have added additional regulations, we are still in phase 4. And as you can see, phase 4 is all about gradually resuming operations into a new normal. So the goal of this entire phase is to still ensure the safety of residents. And as we have seen over the last few weeks, as cases have begun to rise a little bit, that we need to take additional steps to tweak phase 4 in order to ensure that our residents are safe. That's absolutely we have to make these changes in order to make sure that our residents are safe. So there are still restrictions under phase 4, and it may be the case that we have to further adjust, either to further restrict or potentially to loosen, depending on what the data says. So as we announced yesterday, there are 5 new restrictions that will and guidelines that will come into effect this Friday, July 24th at 12:01 a.m. So right as we turn into Friday. First, the number 1 and 2 here are going to be the main focus of today's webinar. I did provide a webinar earlier today that went into detail on all 5 of these restrictions. We'll also be providing a webinar tomorrow at 10 a.m. on health and fitness centers, and then Thursday at 10 a.m. for personal services. So first, and probably most applicable to folks on this webinar, as Samir mentioned also, indoor service will no longer be allowed at any establishment that serves alcohol without food. And again, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on the next slide to talk about that. So, but basically any place that does not offer food but does serve alcohol can no longer do so inside. Secondly, which I'll also cover as a part of today's webinar, table seating at restaurants, bars, and other similar establishments will now be limited to no more than 6 people. So it used to be 10, now it is 6. Table seating is now limited to 6 people only. Next, personal services such as hair salons, barbershops, etc. may no longer offer services that require the removal of face coverings. Fourth, health and fitness centers may no longer offer classes with more than 10 people. 10 is the maximum for which the health and fitness centers can now have classes. Finally, residential property managers are going to be asked to limit guest entry to 5 people per unit in order to avoid indoor gatherings and parties. Now, I see a couple questions come in, and I will be answering those as I get into a little bit further, but I promise I will answer those questions. Okay. First, I'm going to go into detail on what I mean by no indoor service at bars. So what does this mean? No indoor service is allowed at any establishment that serves alcohol without a retail food license. What does this include? Taverns, bars, breweries, lounges, etc. Any establishment or venue that serves alcohol without food can no longer operate indoors. From a licensing perspective, this means that this means establishments that have a tavern or a consumption on premises license that does not have a retail food establishment license with them can no longer serve alcohol indoors. However, outdoor service is still allowed. This is outdoor service as it was allowed for the second half of phase 3 for bars. This means outdoor patios, expanded outdoor dining locations into private property or the public way, rooftops, retractable roofs, and also indoor spaces where 50% of a wall can be removed by opening a window, door, or a panel, provided that the dining tables are within 8 feet of those openings. So again, any establishment that serves food may continue indoor dining and drinking under existing regulations. So if you have a retail food establishment license that allows you to serve food for consumption on your location, you may continue to have indoor operations for both eating and drinking. If you do not have a retail food establishment license, if you do not serve any food inside your location, then you cannot open for indoor dining or drinking. Great. I'm going to open it up for a couple questions related to this. I will get into some things like this in a little bit more detail. One question I have, and I do want to provide a little bit of clarification on this. Can a group reserve 2 tables of 6 at a restaurant? And this is something that I'm going to be following up with folks that attended the previous webinar. That is allowed. A group can reserve 2 separate tables of 6 at a restaurant. However, those tables need to stay 6 feet apart, and people do need to stay seated at those tables. So you can have a group reserve multiple tables of 6, but they must stay 6 feet apart. Have a question about the Sidewalk Cafe license. As Samir mentioned, we are looking into everything that we could possibly do in order to change regulations to make it easier for bars to be outside. Right now, however, sidewalk cafes are not allowed bars cannot get sidewalk cafes if you do not have a retail food establishment license. However, as Samir mentioned, we are working with our partners at City Council to look into other options. And we're interested to hear from you what other options might be available and what other ideas you guys might have. Okay. Looking through a couple questions. I got a question about a bar that offers food to our guests from adjoining or other restaurants that are on the block. Unfortunately, you need to have the retail food establishment license yourself in order to be open for indoor service. You need to be actually serving the food yourself in order to be open for indoor service. I got a great question about event spaces. So event spaces can still serve and be open with up to 50 people and 25% occupancy. You can serve them food. However, if you are only serving alcohol inside, that must cease. You cannot do that. I got a question about an individual that has been denied an expand outdoor dining option. If you can, please send us an email to bacpoutreach@cityofchicago.org, and I will connect you with the right folks here in our department to talk about that. I see a couple questions related to items that I will talk about in just a minute. So I will hold off on answering those for just 1 second. The second new regulation that is going to come into effect starting this Friday is table occupancy will be limited to no more than 6 people. This is, again, a new change. It was 10 people previously. Now, starting Friday, table occupancy at bars, restaurants, coffee shops, event venues, performance venues, any similar establishment in which people sit at tables, indoors or outdoors, does not matter. They will be limited to no more than 6 people per table. Basically, if masks can be removed, then table size should be limited to 6 people. So this is the same thing at wedding venues. Wedding venues, other event venues should have no more than 6 people at a table. You can have larger events up to 50 or 25% capacity, but each table must have no more than 6 people. And as a reminder, patrons must continue to be seated while eating or drinking. So again, I've seen a couple questions related to events. Does the 6 guests per table limit apply to venues, events, and catering? Yes, the 6 guests per table limit does apply to venues, events, and catering. So now I'm going to take, again, I see a couple questions come in. Once I go through all these guidelines, I'm going to stop and answer some of the rest of the questions. I want to take a minute to review all of the guidelines for food services and bars as a reminder for everybody, for all the restaurants and bars on this webinar. First, social distancing. Tables must be 6 feet apart, and you must decommission tables or add physical barriers if they can't be moved. In any place where 6 feet of social distancing is not possible, you must use impermeable barriers. You should clearly mark any area where guests or employees queue with appropriate physical distancing guidelines. And you see the changes in red. Table capacity should be limited to no more than 6 people. And indoor service is permitted only at establishments that serve food, limited to 50 individuals or 25% capacity for each room or space, whichever is fewer. And again, outdoor dining is allowed for both restaurants or bars. And it is, that does not have a limit to the total capacity for outdoor dining. Tables must be 6 feet apart, however, and must have no more than 6 people on a table. Face coverings must be worn over the nose and your mouth for all employees or customers, and they can only be removed while customers are seated and eating. You should be ensuring hand sanitizer or hand washing facilities are readily available for both customer and employee use. And you should be providing health and safety training related to COVID-19, such as, for example, serve safe manager delivery, takeout training, other sort of trainings like that, in order to make sure that your employees have the proper training. You should be implementing screening measures for employees and customers. This means at minimum, employees should not report to or be allowed to remain at work and if they are exhibiting symptoms or reporting that they are feeling ill. So this means at minimum, you should be doing an employee self-screen and making sure your employees are doing a self-screen and in order to make sure that they do not have symptoms. You can do more than that. You can do temperature checks, things like that, but at minimum, they should be doing a self-screen. You should be posting a pledge upon the entrance or conduct a screening to verify customers or anyone else that is entering your facility is not currently exhibiting COVID-19. You should also be establishing daily cleaning standards, thoroughly clean and sanitize the entire facility prior to opening and throughout the day. Provide disposable table items where possible, clean and sanitize non-disposable table items after each use. You should post and maintain visual guidance for hygiene standards for both your employees and your customers throughout your establishment. And you can find these postings at chicago.gov/coronavirus. You should also have, and I typed that into the chat for everyone to have that, you should also be posting some sort of agreement, guidelines, or criteria for everybody before they enter the establishment. Next, and I'll repeat this again, and I've seen a couple questions about this, all patrons must be seated, whether inside, outside, whether you're at a cocktail hour or at bar seating, it does not matter. Everybody must be seated while they are eating or drinking. So I saw a question. Can customers stand at the bar counter or must they sit at the bar stool? They must sit. You can have bar seating open, provided that 6 feet of social distancing is maintained. Cafeterias, buffets, or other self-serve food stations can be open if the employee is serving the food and wearing proper PPE. You should consider workplace modifications to promote social distancing as well. And again, just to remind everybody, want to be abundantly clear about this patrons being seated. Cocktail parties, even if people are socially distancing, they cannot be standing. People cannot be standing at the bar, period, across the board. Anytime anyone is eating or drinking, they must be seated. And I think the reason for this is pretty self-explanatory. We find that when folks are standing and have the ability to stand, there's a lot more mingling. People are a lot closer. And that's something that needs to be, so patrons need to be seen. Last slide here on the guidelines. You should be minimizing shift overlap and in-person interactions where possible, as much as possible, online trainings, virtual staff meetings, things like that. Drinking establishments that do not have a retail food license. So if folks are just drinking and not eating, you must limit seating to a maximum of 2 hours. And now you can restaurants can limit seating as well. We see a lot of people do that, but they must limit seating to a maximum of 2 hours. We strongly encourage cashless or contactless ordering and payment and curbside takeout, carryout, and delivery. And we also strongly encourage reservations to minimize waiting, particularly on areas and days where you may have more crowds, because want to be very clear, managing the line is a responsibility of the establishment. So you should not have long, crowded lines outside of your establishment. As much as possible, you should be limiting staff travel across multiple restaurant locations. If you have restaurant or bar locations, if you have multiple establishments, to limit folks to just staying at one location. And then finally, you should be following the health department and CDC guidance for testing and tracing protocols. If an employee does contract COVID-19, and you should be prepared for that happening. The virus is still very much present in our community. You should be prepared for that. And you should be following the CDC and the health department guidelines to clean and disinfect the workplace before folks return to work. And if you become aware of 2 or more cases possibly associated with your establishment, please report those cases to the Chicago Department of Public Health. You can, again, I'll type it in so you have it on the chat again. You can find more information about what to do if someone tests positive, and what to do if you have multiple cases and how to report by visiting chicago.gov/coronavirus. I'm going to take a little bit on the next few slides to get into some other regulations, but I wanted to open it up to a couple questions related to the reopening. Got a question, does the 50-person limit apply irrespective of the size of the indoor venue? Yes, it does apply irrespective of the size of the venue, even for large venues. And that's because based on, I want to be clear, I'm not the health expert, and this is all based on the direction of our health department. And they have clear criteria for when to increase that person limit as we have fewer and fewer cases. And that's based on how many people are likely to have COVID-19 based on our most recent numbers within certain gathering size. Do patrons need to wear masks when ordering food with servers? So just to get back to the specific directions, at minimum, that face coverings can be removed while customers are seated and eating. So if they are eating or drinking, they do not necessarily need to have them on when the server comes by. However, establishments can encourage that and can set more strict rules than this. Okay. Let me scroll through, and I do apologize again. Just a reminder, I see a couple questions come through the Q&A, and I want to remind you to please submit the questions via the chat so I can see them. So just got a question, clarify bars that don't have food and don't have a retail food license, if they can open in the bar, if they have windows open. So if you can open your windows so that over 50% of the wall is open, then you can have people sit within 8 feet of the establishment, of that wall itself. Can you do a cooking or cocktail presentation in a restaurant for a limited amount of people, provided that all of the other guidelines are being followed? For example, people are seated while they're eating and drinking. That should be okay. Really, we would treat that kind of like a performance venue. So I would recommend that you take a look at the guidelines for performance venues in order to make sure everything is following those rules. What is considered food? So chips, nuts. So when we talk food, we really mean restaurants. We're talking about a retail food establishment license that allows folks to consume on site, to consume food that had been cooked on site as part of that. Great. Couple additional questions about bars having windows. I think I clarified that as well. Some questions about establishments receiving relief. We will, as Samir mentioned, we will be working with our city council to hopefully get some more relief set up. However, if folks have not reached out to pursue the PPP program through the Federal Small Business Administration, I strongly recommend that you do so. Those applications are now available until August 8th. So if you have not received a Paycheck Protection Program loan, please do pursue that as soon as possible. Questions about banquet spaces. They can see, yes, banquet spaces should still be seating a maximum of 6 people per table. question about what is considered a room. So we do not have a formal definition of what considers a room for capacity, but really you should have no more than 50 people or 25% capacity for each room or space. And these should really be entirely different rooms. You know, it's not just kind of sliding off a curtain. These need to be entirely different spaces to be considered rooms. Seen a couple questions about kind of the health metrics behind this. I'd ask you to please submit us an email for those questions. I'm not the health expert, so I don't want to say something that is incorrect, but I'd be happy to connect you with some folks from our health department. Got a question about the PPP. Please send us an email. I'm happy to connect you. The PPP can provide more than just money for payroll, but I'd be happy to, if you send us an email, to connect you with some other resources as well. So again, can you accept a dinner reservation for 14 people seated at different tables? Yes, that is okay, but again, it is your responsibility to make sure that they are seated actually at different tables and not interacting. If our investigators show up and find more than 6 people seated at a table, and if you find more than 6 people seated at a table, then we will be issuing citations on that. And I just want to clarify, at bars that do not have a food license are not allowed to have a sidewalk cafe. However, as Samir mentioned, we are going to be working with our city council to potentially find out what else we can do to make outdoor dining easier and to support all businesses during this time. Okay. Got a couple questions about the travel restrictions. Please send us an email there. Again, I'm not the expert on the travel restrictions. I'd have to connect you with the health department, but happy to do so if you send me an email there. And I got a couple questions that I will answer in just one slide. So I wanted to talk quickly about alcohol sales. So liquor sales for on-site consumption, again, I just want to clarify that obviously requires a tavern or a consumption on premises incidental activity license. You must cease liquor sales for on-site consumption at 11 p.m. each day. Other license activity, however, may continue until later hours. However, you must close at midnight each day. All establishments that sell alcohol for on-site consumption must close at midnight each day. Liquor sales for off-site consumption, you must have a tavern or consumption on premises or a packaged goods license. That must end at 9 p.m. each day. Other license activity may continue, however, and you also may sell cocktails to go. So I saw a couple questions about this related to about cocktails to go and whether that is allowed. Yes, cocktails to go may be sold. However, we will be you cannot sell them for immediate consumption. For example, you can't sell a cocktail or a beer or wine, for that matter, in a glass that can be immediately consumed. The glass must be sealed and tamper evident. So again, you cannot sell something that is that is ready for immediate consumption, particularly cocktails. So I wanted to talk quickly about outdoor options that are available. So again, we know that this is a challenge for bars right now. So we want to make it clear that outdoor options are available. So rooms with retractable roofs or indoor spaces near walls, you don't need any additional permit beyond what you already have. Outdoor patios and rooftops, you'll need an outdoor patio license from BACP if you are serving alcohol. Sidewalk cafes are an option for any establishment that has retail food. And then also you can potentially apply to operate in the street or private property in a parking lot, spaces like that. Now it's important that when you apply for this expanded outdoor dining permit, if you've not done so already, please send us an email and I could get you in touch with how to go about getting an expanded outdoor dining permit. It's important that the the private property that you're selling alcohol from needs to be kind of very close or attached to your establishment. They cannot have alcohol kind of be traveling long distances between there. But that is another option for businesses that may not be able to take advantage of this other opportunity and may have a parking lot or something like that. Great. I recommend that everybody, if you have not done so already, to visit chicago.gov/reopening. This website is going to be updated this week. We also will have information available. All of this information will be available there in multiple languages. We recommend that everybody check out the Be Safe Chicago Phase 4 certification program. This is an opportunity to show your employees and to show your customers that we will be, that you know the guidelines and that you are following the guidelines. I got a couple questions about enforcement. The reason why we want to do all these webinars and give you a little bit of time in order to come into compliance is that we do enforce and we do take enforcement seriously. It's absolutely critical that businesses are following the rules, and we will be continuing to respond to complaints. We're also proactively canvassing a lot of entertainment districts to make sure all the rules are followed. Citations can lead to a fine of up to $10,000 each. We don't want to issue citations, but we will. And we have and we will close down businesses if we need to. In egregious cases, we will absolutely close down businesses. So since reopening started, we've conducted over 600 investigations, cited 36 businesses, and closed 2 for immediate and egregious violations. Those citations are for things like having tables too close, not having customers wear or employees wear face coverings, for other violations such as those. Great. Finally, and again, I do see a couple questions come through. I wanted to take this opportunity to provide a couple additional updates. Right now, there is pending legislation that will extend the expiration date for all licenses that expire between March 15th and September 30th of this year. If your license expires between March 15th and September 30th, you can renew without paying a late fee until October 30th, 2020. Again, this is not law yet, but it will be voted on tomorrow, and it is already passed out of a committee, so we expect that it will be voted into law tomorrow. And that will, again, extend licenses that expire since March 15th up until September 30th. We know the license fee isn't a major cost, but for many liquor establishments, it can be up to $4,400, if not more. And we want to make sure that the city is not an extra burden right now. So you do not need to worry about renewing your license at this point. Again, I also want to remind you folks, it was in an earlier slide, but if you do have 2 or more COVID-19 cases at your facility, we encourage you to report those to the Chicago Department of Public Health. It'll allow them to conduct an investigation, and you'll provide additional support. Finally, I've seen a couple questions again on the emergency travel order. Please visit chicago.gov/coronavirus for more information. And also don't hesitate to reach out to us at BACP Outreach for more information. Again, I'm not the expert on the travel order, but I can make sure to connect you with folks that'll help you get those answers. Finally, and got a couple minutes to answer a couple of questions coming through. Again, a couple kind of health-related questions about why certain requirements are in place. And I'm not the health expert, but if you do send me an email to BACP Outreach, I will make sure to follow up. And also, I want to remind folks this webinar is being recorded, and you will be able to access it on our website shortly. And additionally, I'll be holding webinars tomorrow and Thursday for health and fitness centers and for personal services at 10 a.m. tomorrow and 10 a.m. Thursday. Please, recommend any of your colleagues to check those out. Let me take a look now at a couple of the questions coming through. So ask a couple questions if there'll be a discount on liquor license fees. At this point, there is not a discount, but as I said, we are continuing to have ongoing conversations with City Council. and to see what else we can do to support businesses during this time. But at this point, there isn't a prorated discount, nor will there be a rebate. People will still have to pay the renewal fee. The renewal fee is just deferred. Can I confirm that we can accept a party of 10 on 2 tables of 5? Yes, I can confirm. That is something that was a little bit unclear, I think, in the webinar I provided earlier today. So I'll be following up with everyone that attended that webinar to provide clarity. You can accept a party of more than 6, provided that folks are seated at tables of no more than 6 each. Yes, this webinar will be posted online at chicago.gov/businessworkshops. See a couple questions come through. Just want to clarify that I had a couple questions about what specific licenses are required. Please send us an email for that one. Great, I got a question. Are there guidelines for theaters and performing arts? So there are specific guidelines that you can find on our website, chicago.gov/reopening. Let me just type that in, chicago.gov/reopening. There are specific guidelines for theaters and performing arts venues on that website. Please note, though, that any theater or performing arts venue that provides food or alcohol should follow these food service and bars guidelines. So there aren't different guidelines for the food service portion. So if you're a theater, for example, that provides food, you must have no more than 6 people at a table. You must have face coverings on except when people are seated and eating, things like that. Again, I see a couple questions come through related to why some of these things are in place. Please do send us an email to BACP Outreach. Again, I'm not the health expert. I could just tell you what the guidelines are. I'm happy to work with our health department to get some answers on some of those questions about why. How does a business address customers that do not comply with requirements? These are you can absolutely deny entry to customers that are refusing to comply with these guidelines. That is something that you can deny entry to customers for other reasons. This is certainly one of those reasons as well. So if you have customers that refuse to wear face coverings, you can certainly deny entry to them. Is there a timeline for when we can reopen indoors? Unfortunately, we do not have a definitive timeline at this point. We can say that it's entirely based on what the data says, and it's entirely based on the data. We've talked before, when cases get back below 200 per day, I think that's when the health department has indicated they can start reevaluating this. But it is not based on, unfortunately, we'd love to say it'll be 2 weeks and we'll be back open, but we have to look and see what the case looks like. So I do encourage you all to visit chi.gov/COVID- in order to make sure that you're seeing that data and take a look. And if the case, if the cases do start going down, we would love to be able to reopen for indoor dining. That 200, it's not a definitive threshold, but I would look closely at that 200 number. Okay. Again, a couple questions about the why. Please do not hesitate to reach out to us via email, and I'm happy to get you that information. I'd have to work with our health department a little bit on the why for some of those questions. Great. Again, we are a little bit over time, so please, if there's anything that I did not answer, there were a lot of questions coming through, so I apologize if I didn't answer every question. Please do not hesitate to send me an email at BACP Outreach. Just as a reminder, the biggest new guidelines that comes into effect is that indoor service at bars that do not serve food, you must cease indoor service. You can operate outdoors. Again, we consider outdoor seating to include tables that are within 8 feet of a fully open, over 50% open wall. So again, please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions. and I'll be happy to get you those answers. I apologize if I missed any of your questions during this webinar. Thank you all for the time. And to just kind of reiterate what Samir said from the beginning, I want to thank you all for your dedication and diligence during all this. You know, the cases have gone down significantly compared to what they were at our peak in May. Well, we are seeing a bit of a spike. We're not seeing a spike like we are seeing in other states and cities around the country. And that's due in large part to the efforts of you folks, the business owners around our city. And we will thank you again for your understanding with this. And please, again, see a couple questions come through. Please send us an email for those so I can make sure to get your questions answered. Thanks, everyone.